Sup?
Warning. The following video was filmed and edited in less than a week by a sleep-deprived man with a full-time job. With this in mind, the edits will be inconsistent, the audio will be inconsistent, the music isn't what he wanted, and he couldn't get any more takes. Viewer discretion is advised. Yakuza. Okay, I literally cannot use those. Tape. The tape's not helping. The tape's everywhere. It's all tape. Yakuza, the franchise that only took 10 years to hit mainstream appeal, should any of us ever be so lucky. Recently, I decided to play through all of the mainline Yakuza games, mostly due to peer pressure, and it took me a little too long to do that. Despite having heard of the franchise back in 2015, I only recently started playing through the games, as evidenced by this fucking video, but now that I have played through all of the games, I can say I am a fan now. I'd never really played a beat-em-up before, never really got into JRPGs, and now the next game in the franchise is coming out soon, and I really wanted to make a video about the other games. So the less informed of you are probably wondering how many of the previous 9 games you're going to want to play in order to understand the new one. You should definitely play 7. You should definitely play Like a Dragon in order to understand Infinite Wealth, and I'm just going to interchangeably refer to those as 7 and 8 throughout the rest of the video. 0, Kiwami 2 are all pretty good. 4 and 6 are also pretty good, but I have some minor issues with them. 7 is literally the best, and Gaiden is pretty good on its own. 3 has its issues, and 5 is complicated. And that's kind of the video. Like, comment, and subscribe. Or don't. I don't care, except you, Rob. You have to. You said you were going to. Regardless of what I say in this video, you should absolutely go check these games out. All of them are on Steam and PS4, not sure about Xbox, definitely not on Switch. I would say that they're all worth playing for one reason or another, but then I am a lunatic. Some people may not vibe with the combat from the beat-em-ups, and they might not enjoy the intricacies of the RPG, but if you're like me, you'll enjoy these games just for their style alone. Either way, I'm going to be spoiling each of these games to some extent or another. I'll also have the chapters in the description and on the little bar there, so you've been warned. Also, content warning, these games are M-rated for a reason. Let me introduce you to Kamurocho, Tokyo. Kamurocho is the main town through which most of the games take place. It's located in Tokyo, which is in Kanto, which is the eastern region of Japan. It's home to the Tojo, ancient Yakuza organization. Their main rival are the Omi Alliance, who are based in Sotenbori, Osaka, which is in Kansai, which is to the west of Japan. You're not going to get any more geography lessons from me. These are just the recurring ones that are going to show up multiple times throughout each of these games. I should also mention that about halfway through the explanations for these games, I'm probably going to have a mental breakdown.
I also ran out of energy during the editing process, so scrolling through hundreds of hours of footage to try and find a few seconds that I need is just a bit much. So there's going to be stretches of video where it's just me on camera. Apologies.
So you should know, playing through these games, the stories are okay. Generally, you follow along with them every now and again, but listening to a guy like me explain it in this format, it's going to sound absolutely stupid and dumb. I'm also going to forget a lot over the course of this video, and I'm going to have to catch up with myself. So seriously, just play these games, because I enjoyed most of them, and you might too. But Jesus Christ, I'm going to be skimming over a lot of this.
In the beginning.
So first we're going to start with what I call the revival era of the Yakuza games, with Yakuza 0. 0 was released about 10 years after the first game, and as the number would indicate, it is a prequel. I should also preface this by saying that my summary is not going to do any favors to this game, and this is one of the ones that I genuinely like. So, the year is 1988. The economy is booming, and loan sharks can smell the blood. This guy's blood is being spilled by Kazuma Kiryu, series protagonist for about 64.5% of these games. Kiryu at this point is just a lower rank Yakuza, running a collection job for a local loan shark. After handing off the cash and getting his cut, he meets up with Akira Nishiki. I do have to pause and give a bit of history in order for the rest of this to make some amount of sense. So Kiryu and Nishiki both grew up at a place called Sunflower, an orphanage run by Shintaro Kazuma. He is a captain for the Dojima family, a subsidiary of the Tojo clan. He's also patriarch of his own family and runs Sunflower on the side. You might be wondering, why would a high-ranking Yakuza run an orphanage on the side? And don't worry, we'll get to that later. You might not be surprised by the reason. I should also mention that despite being a Yakuza himself, he never really wanted any of the kids he takes care of to swear up. So Kiryu and Nishiki becoming Yakuza themselves didn't really fit into his plan, but they become Yakuza anyway. Okay, I think that's most of their backstory. So these two go and hang out and drink and do karaoke and stuff before they receive the bad news that the guy Kiryu beat up for this cash is now dead, and their bosses aren't happy. This is when we meet the three lieutenants of the Dojima family, Kuze, Awano, and Shibusara, who I'm not going to generally be referring to by their names because they're all bitches and I don't respect them. You see, they aren't really upset that he died in some empty lot. They're more upset that he died in that empty lot. You see, because of a government-funded revitalization project for the town, the Yakuza started buying up a whole bunch of property in that district so they could sell it back to the government for a shit ton of clean cash. Also, the government can just build some offices or apartments or whatever, not that it really matters. So now this 12 by 15 foot lot of dirt and garbage is worth an obscene amount of money and nobody knows who owns it. However, people do know that there is a body in it now. The Dojima guys want Kiryu to take the fall, obviously, because what kind of amateur shoots a guy on a collection run? Wait, what? So yeah, Kiryu didn't kill the guy, obviously, but the Three Stooges are like guilty until proven an idiot, so instead of confessing to murder, Kiryu decides to investigate himself. Turns out he was set up, but by who? Yeah, he was set up by the three lieutenants. The three amigos want him to take the fall so that Captain Kazuma gets his reputation screwed up because his adoptive son committed murder and fucked up a Yakuza plan. With his reputation destroyed, one of them becomes captain. So in order to save Kazuma's reputation, Kiryu decides to file a formal resignation with his former employer's lower jaw. And that's when Big Man Dojima shows up. I'm not going to dwell on him for too long, because he doesn't become important until later. I will say that the most important contribution he made is his little sperm sprout that shows up later in the series, and that's about it. So Dojima and the two brain cells decide to let Kiryu deal with the cops by himself, while Kuze cuts carrots for their entertainment. Alone, and with nowhere to go, Kiryu is met by a guy who claims to know Kazuma. This is Tachibana, a real estate agent with connections to the underworld. After a bit of hesitation and a shit ton of footage that I just deleted because I was editing this a long time ago and lost a lot of footage, Kiryu decides to join Tachibana Real Estate. First things first, does anybody know who owns the empty lot? Tachibana does, and he's organizing with his associates to safely escort them to Tokyo. Second thing second, Kiryu's still getting harassed by the Yakuza because he kinda just fucked things up. Tachibana goes to the Tojo clan and says, is 500 million enough for this guy's life? And the Tojo are like, want to fight about it? So now Kiryu is free to go, which is good because they finally found the owner for the empty lot. And now we have to rewind a little. The year is 1985. Two upstart Yakuza are carrying out a hit against a rival family. However, when the day finally arrives, only one of them shows up, and with 6 guns in hand, pants, and mouth, he walks in and kills 18 people before turning himself into the police. But what about his friend, the other guy who was supposed to be there? Well, the hit was found out, he was taken, kidnapped, mutilated, and tortured before finally having to serve his sentence in a different kind of prison. Meet Goro Majima, a personal favorite and the other protagonist for this game. So while Kiryu was off being a Yakuza and trying to dodge murder charges, Goro has been serving his sentence as manager of a cabaret club, and his goal in all of this is to make enough money to be reinstated into the family, while also not being allowed to leave and being under constant surveillance from his family's spies. However, instead of making enough money to be reinstated, his handler, Sagawa, has another idea. Someone named Makoto Makamura has been causing trouble for Majima's old boss, Shimano. If Makamura dies, Majima gets reinstated into the family. So after doing some digging, he learns that Makamura works at a massage parlor nearby. He shows up and is met by a young blind woman. He realizes that Makamura's not there and decides to get a massage while he waits. Makamura shows up, he sends the girl away, and then a bunch of guys show up. Turns out, this guy isn't Makamura. Yeah, it's the blind girl. He took on her name to protect her from these guys. Well, so much for that. Majima, realizing that he was sent to kill a young, relatively attractive girl, realizes he's probably in the wrong and decides to take her into protection instead. Meanwhile, a guy named Nishitani goes and fakes her death because he was hired by the Dojima guys to take her back to Tokyo. Except he's not the only one who's going after her, because obviously Majima's guys are there, and also there's the Nikio Consortium, which is the third group who's also going after her. This is only a taste of how ridiculous some of these plots get in later games. At this point in this summary, I'm going to have to start skimming a lot, mostly because I'm trying to speed this up, and two, I deleted a lot of footage from this game, so I literally won't be able to show you most of it. Not like most of the specifics matter in the grand scheme of things anyway. Right, car bomb. After attempting to smuggle Makoto out of Sotenbori, Sagawa makes his own attempt on her life. Unfortunately for him, this guy was standing nearby waiting to save her. His name is Masaru Sera. Remember the Nikio Consortium? Yeah, that's his group. So he comes and kidnaps her from Majima, and now Majima and Sagawa have to go after her. Why is the Nikio Consortium doing this? Because Tachibana hired them to deliver her to Kiryu. Now we're getting back to it. So Kiryu and Oda, I forgot to mention Oda for this. Oda is Tachibana's right-hand man. He and him were both in a gang when they were younger, and that gang got up to some really bad shit, and Makoto was unfortunately one of their victims, because Tachibana came in at a very bad time. Also, it comes up later that Tachibana and Makoto are brother and sister. He joined that gang a little too late. So Kiryu and Oda try and get her out of Sotenbori, and Oda ends up dying, and then he gets shot by Shibusawa, who hired him and Nishitani to try and get her back to Tokyo so that she could sign paperwork with Dojima, and So Kiryu and Makoto make their way back to Kamurocho. He takes her into hiding and goes to find Tachibana, where this guy makes his appearance in the slickest way possible, only to shoot Kiryu and take Tachibana. Also, he's the guy who killed the dude in the lot, because he's a professional. Anyway, there's a bit of a fake out. No, Kiryu, don't. We still have 9 games left to go. Kiryu goes and saves Tachibana, but Tachibana succumbs to his injuries. Kiryu reunites him with Makoto. It's really fucking sad. At this point, we cut back to Majima, who is told by Shimano that he wasn't even supposed to kill her, he was supposed to protect her, and it was a test of character or some bullshit. Anyway, the whole point was that they were going to sell the lot to the Omi Alliance, so that they could fuck with the Tojo, because Shimano's a prick like that. So finally, everyone is out in the open. At the center, we have Makoto, who owns the empty lot. Kiryu, who's trying to protect her from Dojima's guys who want to buy it and up their reputation in the Tojo, Kazuma, who just wants to keep the empty lot for the Tojo, and the Omi, who want it just so they can fuck with the Tojo, and Majima's bosses want her for that. So all of this gets revealed to Makoto. She finally understands how important she is, and how, due to familial shenanigans, she ended up owning the empty lot. So she figures, with nothing else at stake now, her brother's dead, and she's got nothing left to live for, she just goes to Dojima and says, I will give you the empty lot if you kill Huey, Dewey, and Louie over there, and we'll call it good. That goes about as well as you expect. She's in the hospital. Sarah goes to protect her. He fucks up. We hit the finale. Kiryu wants to get Makoto back because she got kidnapped by Shibusawa, because he's a prick. He goes to rescue her. Majima wants revenge for her injuries, and big finale, and it ends with generally everything going okay. Majima is out of his prison sentence. Shimano is still a prick. Kiryu becomes the Yakuza that he's always meant to be. Sarah becomes third chairman of the Tojo, and Dojima can eat shit under Sarah's boot heel. So everything kind of works out in the end. And now we still have every other game in the franchise to play, because seriously, you people need to play these games. The story is always going to be pretty memorable for me. It's one of the better written games because it was technically the 6th game in the franchise, so it benefits from 6 games worth of writing improvement that also translates in the gameplay. This is probably the best gameplay out of most of the early games. The upgrade system is the most straightforward in the entire franchise, and 2, with this being the 6th game, it meant that they could improve with the combat styles, and so they had four. They had 4 combat styles in this game for each protagonist, with the main variety being strong, fast, mid, and the best one. And of course the upgrades become very easy once you start playing more of the minigames. Speaking of the minigames, this one has probably the best minigames in the franchise, with the particular standout being the Pocket Circuit game. And the business management minigames are mandatory if you want to get the best combat styles. I did that, and I will say that I definitely like Majima's minigame the best. For Kiryu's minigame, you push a button, wait 5 minutes, make 100 million yen. It's the fastest way to make money in the game, but it is horrendously boring, whereas Majima's is actually engaging. These side stories are also just really good in this game. Because it's a prequel, they could use the sub-stories to, prepare people for future games. If you have ever played an action game before in your life, it's going to feel a little clunky. That's just how most of the older Yakuza games were. But once you start playing, you stop noticing the clunkiness, and it just becomes part of the game. It's Yakuza, and plus the style makes up for literally every problem I have with the game. I will say that with every iteration, the games improve, and with Zero being one of the last games on this engine, it's clearly the best one out of the original half of the games. Zero is just overall one of the better ones. It's constantly competing with 7 for everybody's favorite. However, we still have 6 more games to go before we get to that, so
10 years in the joint made you a fucking puss.
So after Zero's release, but before 6 hit shelves, right in the middle, Sega decided to remake Yakuza, the first one. This time under the name Yakuza Kiwami. And now we've hit a bit of a crossfade in what I refer to as the eras of Yakuza. And that's because, gameplay-wise, this is the latest game on this engine. So it has 10 years of gameplay improvements. Story-wise and writing-wise, though, this was the first game, so it's really fucking rough. In terms of recommendation, you could probably skip this one, but you shouldn't, because despite the writing, I still recommend you play this game. Bear in mind, I'm still weird. The year is 1995. Kiryu and Nishiki are hanging out with another friend of theirs from Sunflower, Yumi Sawamura. There's also a dude named Shinji, who will have some influence over the plot, but I'm not going to be focusing on him. Unfortunately for everyone, Sohei Dojima still exists, and he's being a prick like he normally does. He tries to force himself on Yumi, Nishiki shoots him, and now Kiryu can see before him what's going to happen to his best friends. And he decides nah, so he fesses up to the murder of Dojima, and ends up going to prison for 10 years, despite the fact that the main guy investigating it really doesn't believe him. We're gonna get back to this guy later, though. Fast forward 10 years, it's 2005, and Kiryu is back on the streets of Kamurocho, and his first job is to meet up with some guys that Kazuma recommended he meets, Kazuki and Yuya, 2 hosts that work in Kamurocho, and he also wants him to meet up with Shinji again. I'm not focusing on him, I'm sorry. Unfortunately for Kiryu, shit's been going on since he's been in prison. 10 billion yen has gone missing from the Tojo's bank account. Sarah is dead, just murdered. The Kazuma family got betrayed by Nishiki at some point in the last 10 years, because Nishiki's fucking useless, and Shimano's doing other conspiracy shit, because that's just what he does in these fucking games. Of course, this doesn't have fucking anything to do with Kiryu, but because his dad's involved, and because his bro's involved, now he's involved, because that's just how he is. It also doesn't help that at Sarah's funeral, Kazuma gets shot, and now Kiryu's implicated in that, because Kiryu just is a magnet for murder charges, apparently, I guess. Thankfully, on his way out of the funeral, Makoto Date shows up. Thank God! He swings in, saves Kiryu, and basically explains kind of what's been going on. We also learned that after Date saved Kiryu, Shinji ran in and saved Kazuma, so he's being taken care of, but we'll get back to that later. Wanting to learn a bit more about what the fuck is going on with Nishiki and everything, he goes back to their usual spot, Serena. We're gonna see more Serena later. We're gonna see a lot of Serena later. Of course, nobody really knows what happened to Nishiki. Doesn't really matter, but an update about Yumi. She went missing a couple years ago. Nobody knows where she went. However, immediately after she went missing, her sister, Mizuki, shows up, whom nobody knew about. But we do know that her sister works at a bar somewhere in Kamurocho. So, a lead ends up leading Kiryu to a bar called Bacchus, a bar that has seen better days, and there we meet Haruka. We're going to see a lot more of this girl later. After figuring out a bit more of her situation, considering that, we learn that she's Mizuki's daughter, apparently, that Aunt Yumi gave her this little pendant that she's carrying around, and she grew up at Sunflower, too. Neat, I guess. So, not only is she now involved in all this, but she also has a lead. She knows where Mizuki works. She works at a bar called Ares, which is at the top of the Millennium Tower. Look familiar? They go there and are confronted by the Omi. And while there, they learn a few things. One, Mizuki looks exactly like Yumi. And also, the Omi really want Haruka for some fucking reason. They don't explain that part. They escape, obviously, and now they're out of leads again. So Date provides a new lead, and that is the Florist. An ex-cop turned information broker who works somewhere in Kamurocho and primarily does his correspondence through bouquets. We don't see that for another 3 games, but he does it. Anyway, his hunt for the Florist takes him to a random public restroom that connects to a homeless camp, which connects to an underground red light district that is run by the Florist. The Florist ends up wanting Kiryu to take part in his Coliseum in order to get information, and that's when we meet the best recurring, not at all important character, Gary Buster Holmes. You don't need to remember him, but you will remember him. After all that Coliseum business, Date shows up at Purgatory with a few more wounds and one less girl. Haruka has been kidnapped. That's not the last time I'm going to say that sentence. She's been kidnapped by Majima. And now I have to explain. After the events of Zero, Majima just sort of became a bit of a wild card character. He's so unhinged, but he's just my favorite. One boss fight later, Haruka is saved. Then there's 2 completely unrelated stories revolving around Date's daughter and the Florist's son. It doesn't matter at all. I just wanted to mention it so I could show this cutscene with a little bit of context. At this point, we also learned that Date's bosses are trying to arrest Kiryu for kidnapping Haruka. Unfortunately for everybody, Mizuki has been found dead. Oh shit, but with her being found dead, we learn that she had a tattoo made by the same guy who did Kiryu's tattoo. He didn't actually, but his name is on it, so it's a lead. Kiryu goes to talk with him, and then he gets a call from Nishiki. He goes and talks with Nishiki at Serena, and we learn that the main thing they're going after is the pendant that Haruka has. And apparently, Mizuki and Yumi were responsible for stealing the 10 billion yen. And also, Nishiki is the one who shot Kazuma at the funeral. Also, he put a bug on Shinji so that he could figure out where Kazuma went, because he's got understandable trust issues. And then Kiryu fights off the Nishikiyama family, and the only reason I'm mentioning it is because he specifically fights off Koji Shindo. He'll come back later, I promise. I should also mention that at this point in the story, because Kiryu was meeting Nishiki, he had Haruka secreted away at Purgatory so that nobody could get her. So Haruka has been kidnapped, but this time by some street gangs. Why are street gangs kidnapping kids? Well, they were hired by the Snake Flower Triad. Who the fuck are they? Well, they are run by Lao Kalong. Who the fuck is he? He runs the Triad, and he and Kiryu had a deal a while ago, but that shit got fucked up, and now he hates Kiryu. So he kidnapped Haruka, because he was hired by Shimano, who is working with another dude named Terada. He'll come back later too. So yeah, basically he was hired by Nishiki and Shimano separately to try and get the pendant from Haruka, and then he kidnapped Haruka just because he fucking hates Kiryu. And this is just gonna be even more of a mess, so I'm just going to literally go step by step the rest of this plot, and if you care at all about emotional beats, just play these fucking games, because I don't want you to use this as an excuse not to play these fucking games. Okay. The police learned that the body wasn't actually Mizuki, but some random woman. There's a secret government group called the MIA, and that's also going to be important, because they're also trying to find the 10 billion yen. Why? Because there's a man at the top. His name is Jingu. He also comes back later. He's kind of important. The whole reason that Nishiki is evil now is because he failed to save his sister, because he literally just sucks at everything. I'm being harsh, okay, but Nishiki does nothing right this entire franchise. It is insane how bad this man is at doing literally anything right. Oh yeah, speaking of Nishiki, the reason that he knew about the tattoo shop is because Reina, the bar lady who runs Serena, was spying on Kiryu for Nishiki. Reina and Shinji both get killed. That fucking sucks. Shinji told some girl at a bathhouse called Shangri-La, that'll come up later, a bunch of information about Kazuma so that she could tell Kiryu if he ever showed up. She tells Kiryu that Kazuma is being taken care of by Terada, but we can't dwell on that too much now because Mashima just showed up. Kiryu finally meets back up with Kazuma, and he explains literally the entire plot. After Dojima got shot, Yumi just stopped acting like Yumi, married a dude named Jingu, remember him? They had a kid, yeah, her, and then he remarried some more politically advantageous woman and wanted the Tojo to take care of Haruka and Yumi, and also to take care of his 10 billion yen. Why does he have that? Well, we're not going to find out for another 3 games. And even then, it's not going to matter, so who cares? After Sarah and Kazuma didn't kill Yumi and Haruka, they put Haruka back into the system, Sunflower, and Yumi got a new name. Surprised? They get interrupted by Shimano, who wants to have a boss fight. He has one and kills Kazuma. Before Kazuma dies, he reveals to Kiryu and Haruka that the reason he ran Sunflower was because it was an orphanage of all the kids who he killed the parents of. I told you weren't going to be entirely surprised by this. Also, Kazuma was carrying Sarah's will, and we'll find out why he was carrying his will in just a minute. They find out that all the money is being held at Ares. They go back to the Millennium Tower. Jingu shows up to disown Yumi and Haruka once again. The MIA show up, and Nishiki shows up to have his boss fight, and literally just explains his whole motivation, because Kiryu is a protagonist, and he wants to be a protagonist. Anyway, he, Jingu, and Yumi all get blown the fuck up because Yumi decided to blow up the money instead of giving it up. And the 10 billion yen rains from the sky down upon Kamurocho. Remember the way I phrased that. It will come back in 3 games. A lot happens in Yakuza 4. We find out that Sarah named Kiryu as the 4th Tojo chairman. Why he would want to be chairman, nobody knows. Didn't want to, though. So he instead immediately resigns from the Yakuza, for real this time, not like Zero. And he gives the 5th chairman position to Terada. Kiryu decides to entirely retire from the Yakuza so that he can go and live a peaceful life and raise Haruka properly. Hopefully. Maybe. There's 8 more games. I actually kinda enjoyed this one, and I still recommend playing it. Thankfully, with it being a remake, it solves all of the gameplay issues from the first game, but because they had to adapt the story again, the writing's not nearly as good as any of the future games. Thankfully, with all of the improvements that Zero brought, pretty much the gameplay is exactly the same. The upgrades are handled almost exactly the same, and they introduced a new system, Majima Everywhere, which is the only way to unlock the true potential of the actual fighting style from the original. Majima Everywhere is my favorite minigame they introduced in this game, which sucks, because it's only in this game. Aside from that, the game is alright. And because it's a remake of the first game, it saves me the trouble of having to buy a copy for the PS2. Unfortunately, being a remake makes criticizing the story a lot easier in hindsight, but growth is always more noticeable with improvement, and the next one is a big improvement.
Just when I thought I was out.
Kiwami 2. It's another remake. It is on the Dragon engine, which is a new engine that they introduced in Yakuza 6, so it's going to look a lot different from the other two that I just mentioned. It's going to look a lot different from the next three I talk about. I will say that for these first couple of games, I often refer to them as the soap opera games, because the writing really didn't get better until Yakuza 4, and this game specifically has a lot of plot twists that I am going to struggle to talk about. So, just play this game. Just play these ones. Save us both the trouble of me having to explain it, even though I literally recorded this already. Back in the 80s, but before Yakuza 0, Kazuma and Shimano are sent to a Korean mafia hideout in order to kill everybody and light the place up. A detective named Kawara is trailing behind them and manages to save this woman and her kid. Back to the present day, which is 2006, Kamurocho's kind of in the shitter. We learn in a side thing that they added in the remake that Terada just kinda fucked up the Tojo clan after Kiryu left. He fucked things up to such a degree that Majima just outright quit and ended up leaving Kashiwagi to fix everything. I forgot to mention Kashiwagi. Kashiwagi was Kazuma's right-hand man. He helped run the Kazuma family while Kazuma was incarcerated in the 80s, and now he's patriarch of the Kazuma family. Oh look, they have a Millennium Tower office. How nice. Anyway, Terada did such a shitty job that his old crew, the Omi Alliance, remember them, they're making moves on Kamurocho now. He is so bad at his fucking job that he just straight up goes to Kiryu to ask him to help him do the job. And then he gets shot, so much for that. Haruka's back at the orphanage, and Kiryu has to go figure out what the fuck is going on in Kamurocho. Thankfully, Terada happened to be carrying his will on him. How convenient. In his will, he tells the Tojo and the Omi that he wants them to partner up so that they stop cannibalizing each other and just work together. Yayoi Dojima, a shitbag's widow, is acting chairman while they try and figure out what's going on. And since Kiryu kind of blames himself for literally everything that's happened to these last two games, he decides that he will go deliver the message to the Omi, and not only that, but he's also going to help try and find a replacement chairman for the Tojo. Daigo Dojima, shitbag and MILF's kid, is a washed-up Yakuza whose life just entirely went to shit after Kiryu went to prison. But he decides to help out. So they go to Sotenbori to try and meet up with the Omi Alliance. And while there, Kiryu runs into a guy named Ryuji Goda. He is the son of Jin Goda, the current Omi Alliance chairman. And after a vague threat from Ryuji, the Millennium Tower blows up. Again. The cops back in Kamurocho are pretty sure it was a foreign group that bombed it, but they're not entirely sure. They also think that Goda is involved somehow. This guy's investigating it. Meanwhile, the cops in both Kamurocho and Sotenbori really want Kiryu put in protective custody. Kiryu shows up, the Omi really aren't helpful, and then Ryuji stages a coup against his own father. So now that the peace talks have gone to shit, the cops send in Kaoru Sayama to take Kiryu into protective custody, and Jin and Daigo both get kidnapped by Ryuji and some other guys we'll get back to later. So now, back in Kamurocho, Date and Kawara are trying to look into the bombing to figure out what's going on, and one of their suspects is Kazuki. Cut back to Kiryu and Sayama. Sayama gets shot by some Omi guys who are trying to intimidate them. Instead of going to a hospital, they go to a bar called Ahoy, where her adoptive mom removes the bullet from her shoulder and has a back and forth with Kiryu. Kiryu is informed by her boss, Besho, that Daigo and Jin were taken back to Kamurocho. So now they go back to Kamurocho to try and figure out where they went. It's Majima! He and Kiryu go through the motions, and he agrees to help out with some of the Tojo problems. Lead leads to a specific building. Meanwhile, Date and Kawara are interrogating Kazuki, who runs away. Just so happens that they run to the same building, where they learn that Kazuki has been impersonated by some Korean dude. Sayama shoots Kazuki, and we also learn through conversation that Kawara has a bit of a history of shooting Koreans. Unfortunately, some footage of Date killing Kazuki gets leaked to the police, and so now he's wanted for murder. Who in the world would have video footage at that particular angle of Date shooting Kazuki? So we go and see the florist again, who's working with the cops again. He explains that apparently someone in his organization is a rat. I should also mention at this point that pretty much the only reason that Sayama is involved in any of this is because she thinks the dojo killed her parents. I wonder who could have done that. So we learn that Kazuki was actually kidnapped by a group called the Jingwon Mafia, a Korean group. Yeah, the guys who got shot at the start of the game. After some time passes, the florist learns that Daigo was taken to Shangri-La. It's seen better days. Kiryu rescues Daigo, and Daigo explains that Goda got taken somewhere else. We don't know where. The dojo hold a funeral for Terada. Ryuji shows up and explains that he and Jin aren't actually related. I wonder if that'll be important later. Also, how many orphans are in these games? Actually, there's a lot more. I shouldn't try to count that. Ryuji dishes out some more ominous threats, and then the Omi start marching on Kamurocho. Turns out, they actually had an inside man to help them take over the dojo. It's Shindo. Remember him? Yeah, he made a deal with the Omi so that, they could take over the dojo, and he could make moves on Yayoi, because everybody in the Nishikiyama family is horny bastards. Cut to Kanda. While all that is happening, Date learns that Kawara and Besho were both involved in the Jingwon thing back at the start of all this, and he goes through the old police report and figures out that they do have a lead. One of the guys survived. So Sayama and Kiryu go and meet with this guy, and Sayama reveals that she actually thinks she was one of the surviving Jingwon members. And then some Koreans show up and kill him because they're loyalty over life type of mafia guys. And this is when we learn that because Kiryu was kind of just an idiot kid, he might have been responsible for killing her dad. Sayama leaves, and Kiryu has a bit of a moment. No, Kiryu, don't. We still have 7 more games to go. Bleeding out and not so sure of himself, he goes back to Aoi, and he meets back up with Sayama's mom, and Kawara's there for some reason. While Kiryu's out cold, we learn that some of the Omi guys are struggling to figure out how they're going to handle Kiryu. There is, however, one surefire way that you can get Kiryu wherever you want him to go. Haruka has been kidnapped. Kiryu goes and wrecks the place, fights a bunch of tigers, and then confronts the Omi guy that kidnapped her. Ryuji thinks that kidnapping kids is kind of a shit deal, so he kills him and gives Haruka back to him. Kiryu is still suffering from a knife wound. They take him back to Aoi, where Mom left Sayama a note saying that Kiryu wasn't actually responsible for killing her dad, because her dad's actually still alive. Gee, I wonder who that could be. No time to focus on that, though, because Date and some other guys have been taken hostage by one of the detectives that was researching that thing. Yeah, it's this guy. He's one of the Jing-1 survivors. Who would have thought? He threatens that if Sayama and Kiryu don't show up, they're gonna blow up the Millennium Tower again. Kiryu and Sayama go to save Date, and then Kawara shows up. He explains that the whole reason that he's been shooting Koreans is because he's been hunting down the Jing-1, because after he saved the boss's wife and her kid, he ended up marrying her and having a kid. Yeah, her. Question is, what happened to the other kid? Well, after they settled down, they realized, okay, if he's going to stay a police officer, then the Jing-1, or any survivors of the Jing-1, are probably going to hunt him down and hunt down the kid and the mom. That happens. So, mom unfortunately dies, and the kid was taken away to safety, mostly to just keep him away from the Jing-1. Unfortunately, Kawara got shot by the Korean cop, and now we are seriously running out of leads. Also, we do know that the Koreans set up a bunch of bombs as revenge for the Tojo killing all their guys back in the 80s. In order to find any leads, they find out that he had a disc on his person because people just carry important documents on them at all times. Sayama takes that disc to go figure out whatever's on it, and turns out Ryuji is her half-brother. What about the bombs? Well, while all that's going on, the Omi Alliance is making their move on Kamurocho because Ryuji is just good at timing. The Tojo go and deal with the bombs, while Kiryu, single-handedly, deals with Ryuji's clan. Eventually, he confronts Ryuji directly, and Ryuji says, "Nah, you kind of fought off way too many of my guys. I kind of want to fight you at full strength. Meet me at the top of Kamurocho Hills." Sayama and Kiryu both confront Ryuji, who has Goda. Ryuji gets defeated by Kiryu, and now all of the plot lines are going to come collapsing in on each other real quick, so give me a minute. Hirata shows back up and explains that he was also one of the survivors of the Jing-1. He got involved in Kiwami 1 so that he could fuck up the Tojo, so that Kiryu would get involved. Kiryu getting involved would get Ryuji involved. Hirata gets betrayed by the other Omi. Turns out there was a bomb up there, and shit's gonna explode. Ryuji kills everybody. There's a really fucking awesome boss fight. Just, you gotta play this one. And there's this really awesome, just staring down the face of death moment with Kiryu and Sayama as everybody watches as everybody survives, nothing happens. The bomb was defused by Hirata for some reason. I have literally no idea why he defused the bomb before he set it up. Or why he decided to go through with the writing gets better later. Why did you sit through that? That was such an awful summary. So, with the change to the new Dragon engine, Kiwami 2 plays very differently from every other game surrounding it. While the gameplay is a hell of a lot smoother, it got rid of pretty much all the variety that Zero and Kiwami brought, and it just brings it down to a single combat style. The upgrade system is also really weird. Like, it's a little hard to understand. I found it interesting because, again, lunatic, but just because it's interesting doesn't mean it's good. Yeah, upgrading everything is a lot more complicated now. They introduced this system in 6, and it's because 6 came before, it wasn't much better then. The minigames and side stuff also took a bit of a hit. The cabaret minigame from 0 made its comeback, but I didn't like it as much in this one. I think it's just the presentation. The new engine just didn't make things look as good as they did last time, and the music's different, so it's not as, awesome, but, I mean, it's whatever. There's also story stuff related to it, but I didn't finish that minigame to see it all the way through. You might. Good luck. I also mentioned at the start of this that there was a side story that they added to the remake, and the writing in that is miles beyond this. It did not deserve to be as good as it was, but it wraps up a bunch of loose plot stuff from Zero and Kiwami. It's awesome. It's lovely. You should play this just for that. Also, Ryuji, easily my favorite antagonist out of this entire franchise. He is just a principled villain, and he fucking loves his job, and he fights Kiryu because he just wants to be the best, like no one ever was. And god damn it, this man is just a goddamn treasure. Just emits charisma, and I fucking love those villains. This one is certainly a recommendation from me, just for the experience, but the next one really isn't. I do kind of have to preface this section of the video. Technically speaking, out of all of the games I've played, this one is the oldest. Despite the fact that I played the remaster, Yakuza 3 is the oldest out of the ones I have played. The remaster kept pretty much everything the same and just didn't update much. This was the first game on the PS3, so they had to deal with all of the hardware changes and kinda struggle dealing with that. Again, the games improve with every one, but because this is the oldest out of them, the gameplay takes a major hit. Yeah, the remaster definitely made this one a lot more accessible, but I don't blame people if they skip this one. To summarize the last 3-ish years since 2's plot, Kiryu is now running an orphanage in Okinawa called Morning Glory, with Haruka's help, of course. Sayama left for the United States. Daigo became chairman of the Tojo, with some help from Majima, of course, after some convincing from Kiryu. But of course, nothing can go well for Kiryu. Some local Yakuza are trying to evict Kiryu, and due to this, we learn that there is a real estate project in... Oh, no, not again. This one's even worse than Zero's. Yakuza are trying to sell a plot of land to the government to make a bunch of government money so that the government can build a military base or a resort, one of the two, or both. This whole thing is a political issue between Japanese Richard Nixon and Japanese Donald Trump. Pre-politics Trump, he just wants his resort. Yakuza shenanigans ensue, and Kiryu becomes really good friends with this family now, and they agree to protect him. And Daigo shows up with this kid, Toma, and explains that the whole job was organized by the Tojo, but now that he knows Kiryu's involved, putting a stop to it. No more. Something I do need to touch on before I go too much further is that a majority of this plot focuses around these 8 kids. I love these kids. I love them to death. Their stories are cute. I'm not going to talk about literally any of them, because all you need to know is that Kiryu cares about them, and they're awesome. That's all you need to know. Also, seeing Kiryu as a dad without having to be a Yakuza is actually really fucking cool. I like that. He's a good dad. I've touched on the Tojo earlier. They're doing relatively well under Daigo. Of course, with that government deal going on, someone really wants Daigo to take Kiryu's land and sell it to the government. Thankfully for Kiryu, the friends he made in Okinawa that were trying to evict him still have the deed to his land. Until his new friend gets shot in the stomach, the shooter delivers the deed to Daigo and then shoots him in the stomach. It's Kazuma. And he's working with Albert Wesker over here. He's supposed to be dead, so what the fuck is going on? So now Kiryu, having learned this, has to run all the way back to Kamurocho to figure out what the fuck is going on. He's also joined by Rikiya, one of the guys who just wants revenge for his boss getting shot. With Daigo out of commission, Kashiwagi calls a meeting for all of the remaining Tojo officers: Mine, Hamazaki, Kanda, and Majima. Kashiwagi basically wants Kiryu to come back to help stabilize things. Mine agrees. Hamazaki just wants revenge for Daigo, and Kanda is patriarch for the Nishikiyama family. Of course, Majima doesn't really care as long as nobody fucks with him, and he also knows that Kiryu's going to survive this. Kashiwagi calls Kiryu to his Millennium Tower office, and Kashiwagi explains that there's a traitor in the Tojo, and then is found by Date. But he's not a cop anymore. He's actually an investigative reporter who's been investigating all the fucked up shit that the Tojo have been dealing with for the last couple of years. He explains that Kanda was just a foot soldier when Kiryu was in prison, so he doesn't really matter, but he's with Nishikiyama's family. Mine is a money guy who helped fund Kanda's shit, and Hamazaki runs a really small family that is way too powerful for what they're doing, and is definitely clearly working with the Chinese. Out of the 3 people that could have betrayed the Tojo, Kanda seems to have the most reason to do it because that's just what the Nishikiyama family does. After following a lead, Rikiya and Kiryu go to a hotel where Kanda's at, have probably the best awkward cutscene in the entire franchise, and then confront Kanda. Kanda tells him that Hamazaki actually has more of a reason for actually taking down Kashiwagi. Because Hamazaki has been very obviously working with the Triads, he's going to lead the Triads on Kamurocho, because that's just what the Triads do apparently. Also, Hamazaki has been put in charge of the resort deal in Okinawa, and that includes finding builders. It's Majima. You know, Majima's construction company is pretty much the only construction company in Kamurocho, apparently. So, naturally, Kiryu wants to find out Majima's side of things. They go through the motions. Majima explains that Hamazaki is basically just using his position as leverage. Of course, Majima does know somebody who does know something.
Unfortunately, the rest of the footage is blurry because I forgot to refocus the lens and have no good way of focusing it, so I'm sorry.
So I have no idea where the camera cut off there. It's a new day, the sun is out, and the battery full-on died. Anyway, the florist. The florist has been investigating Hamazaki because he's working with the Snake Flower Triad and Daigo hired him to investigate Hamazaki. Anyway, the florist is also confused as to why the hell Kazuma's still alive. Can't talk about that though, because Lao Kalong is back and he brought the whole Snake Flower Triad to invade Kamurocho. He's looking for Rikia, the dude that came with Kiryu, because they are looking for Kiryu and can't go find him on their own, I guess. Kiryu confronts them. Turns out the only reason they're involved with the resort deal is because they wanted revenge on Kiryu and they knew that the resort was where his orphanage was. He gets his ass beat again, and Kazuma shows up. Finally, he kills Lao, and then he proceeds to have this scene that I'm just gonna play in its entirety.
Yuga Kiryu Kazuma ka? Ah. Beautiful eyes. Like I heard from my brother before.
Are you fucking kidding me?
No.
Are you fucking serious? Yeah, so this is actually Joji Kazuma. This is Shintaro's younger brother who speaks English, so you can guess where he's been for the last however many years. We also learned he was part of the CIA, which also explains why he hasn't been around much. We still aren't entirely sure why he or Albert Wesker are involved in any of this. We have to cut back to Mine, because we haven't talked much about him. Anyway, he was funding Kanda's whole project, but he got sick and tired of Kanda's bullshit. He fucking decapitates Kanda and delivers his head to Kiryu as an apology and proceeds to talk shit about how worthless Kiryu is. So that's Mine's plot for the most part for now. What about Hamazaki? We know that he was working with the Chinese, but now that Lao's dead, what happened to him? Well, when you get involved with the Triad and your plot ends up getting their boss killed, so yeah, he's fucking missing. He's gone. Mine ends up talking shit on Kiryu, saying that he's a hypocrite because he's one of those villains. I really don't like Mine. He is my least favorite antagonist in all of these games. Going from Goda to Mine basically says that since Daigo's out of commission and Kanda's dead and Hamazaki's out of the way and Majima doesn't fucking want to do it, he's gonna become chairman, I guess, because that's exactly what the Tojo needs right now. Of course, Majima trying to deal with the other families, that solves one issue regarding the Yakuza, but we've still got a million other unanswered questions, like what the hell else is going on? And that's when Kiryu gets a call from this Nixon-looking dude that I talked about earlier. He basically says, hey, I need your help with something. Do you want me to explain the plot verbally to you for the next 12 fucking cutscenes? Date goes with Kiryu and he explains. The military base was just a whole ass hoax. They weren't actually going to build it. The only reason they promoted it was so that they could draw out the attention of a weapons dealer called Andre Richardson and his group Black Monday. Joji is the American connection who's been working to try and find Richardson. He explains the whole Joji-Shintaro relationship. Toma, that kid from the earlier cutscene, did some political things on the side and is trying to get the resort built, but because he knows that Bill is fake, Joji needs to kill him. We can't let that fucking happen, so Kiryu leaves, gets confronted by a whole bunch of guys who apparently work for Toma, I guess, and then Majima shows up in my favorite fucking out-of-context cutscene. Kiryu makes his way back to Okinawa, where Toma is making this resort deal happen, confronts Joji. Joji says he's sorry. Joji basically explains why they had to do things the way they did. He knows that Daigo is in a specific hospital. Unfortunately, he can't explain everything because one of the kids shows up. This red turd from the first boss fight in the game is demolishing Morning Glory. Mine hired him to go destroy Morning Glory because fuck Kiryu and these kids. And then Mine talks shit and slaps Haruka. I really don't like Mine. He is a piece of shit. I don't care what sort of redemption arc he goes through in the last 5 minutes of this game. He is not a good character. I do not like him. Kiryu goes and fights the dude that he fought in the first fight. Rikia ends up getting shot. Joji shows up and shoots the red guy in probably the most realistic death in this entire franchise. Followed by Rikia spending the next 5 minutes bleeding out and pouring his heart out to Kiryu. And then Kiryu cries more for a dude he's known for less than a year than he did when his actual love interest from the first game died. I don't understand it, but it goes to show how fucking bad the writing was in the first game. This isn't my biggest problem with this game. It's just inconsistent. We learn that Mine ended up working with Black Monday to try and make the resort deal happen. Kiryu takes a military jump jet back to Tokyo. We have probably the most awkward use of English in this entire franchise.
Okay, got it. No. There's no change in the plan. Bye.
I know what they were going for. I know that it was supposed to be intimidating, but for an English-speaking fan of this franchise, it is some of the funniest bullshit in any of these games. Kiryu finally shows up at the hospital, and we're confronted by Albert Wesker, who, in a very short Tekken moment, explains that Daigo was taken by Mine to the rough, and Kiryu fights him, and then goes to find Daigo, and learns that Mine is just clinically insane. He basically explains that he was an orphan, and he's one of those villains with the motivation that because I struggled, anybody who asks for help is a pussy and a parasite. That's why he talks shit on all those kids, and hates Kiryu because he was also an orphan. There's so many orphans in this franchise. He just pursued money almost exclusively so that he could basically buy anything he wanted and all the influence because he didn't trust people, and then explains that he hates people because he doesn't believe that genuine human connection exists and that everybody only wants money. So he's a hypocrite. He's a fucking hypocrite. Don't call people hypocrites if you don't introspect, you fucking asshole. I hate him. Anyway, Kiryu beats the fuck out of him, as he deserves. And then he has like a moment of self-reflection and realizes that he's a fucking hypocrite. And then Wesker shows up and reveals, oh no, he's actually Andre Richardson. You know, the only named American character in this entire video game, and the only white guy to show. Yeah, Mine Ganon sides off the side of the building with Richardson in hand, and the game ends, Daigo's alive, and Mine is gone, and so is Richardson. Oh yeah, Hamazaki also shows back up. Kiryu says, hey, I'll give you a second chance. And then he stabs him, because he's everyone in this game's a fucking asshole. No, Kiryu, don't. We still have 6 more games to go. Don't worry, he survives. Being the oldest game in the franchise, technically speaking, the gameplay is pretty rough compared to the others, but it's probably still better than the PS2 games. I don't know. The upgrade system is probably the worst out of any of these games because the descriptions don't, and you have to choose between one of 2 to 3 upgrades every time you level up. I didn't realize that until like the final chapter, so I don't know what I missed out on. This game also introduced the Revelations mechanic, which, while being really entertaining, I really don't like this system because the only way to get a new move is you have to show up, watch a cutscene, play a QuickTime event, and then do a multiple choice quiz, and if you get it right, then you get a move. It's entertaining, but it's not good. Oh yeah, this is the first game to introduce the chase minigame, which became a staple for the next 3 games. And yeah, it's being the first one, it's really fucking rough. In hindsight, this is still probably as good as was expected in 2009. Obviously, I'm playing it in 2023, so it's a little rough. This one is also probably the most skippable out of all the games. Like, they reference shit that happens in 3, but the only thing that carries over are the kids showing back up, making cameo appearances in the other games, getting to see Kiryu be a dad, who is also probably the best part of this game. But otherwise, you can skip this one. You got everything you need out of it in this summary. Oh yeah, and the only other thing you need to know is that a bunch of people died and that Hamazaki's a bitch.
Hey, it's your boy.
Yakuza 4. It's alright. This was only a year after Yakuza 3, so it's still not the best one, but they at least got a hang of the hardware, so it's better. They also got to do multiple protagonists, so I'm gonna be speeding up the summaries just a little bit to try and get through all of them. It's 2010, and we're not following Kiryu anymore. Allow me to introduce you to Shun Akiyama, your new favorite protagonist. He's not a Yakuza this time. He is just a moneylender in Kamurocho who runs Sky Finance. You can take a wild guess as to where his money came from. One of his clients happens to be a small-time Yakuza family called Kanamura, and this kid, named Kido, is one of his boys, and they're having trouble with a group called the Ueno Saiwa clan. He overhears that there's trouble at one of their clubs. He runs over to help, and this guy named Arai also shows up. He and Akiyama have history, they're good friends, and he's the reason that he's funding the family in the first place. Anyway, Arai gets shot by one of the Ueno guys and then shoots him back, but better. Akiyama happens to be close by when he gets shot, and this guy tells him to run, and Akiyama doesn't listen. This cop, named Sugiyuchi, explains to Akiyama that Kanamura, the guy he lent the money to, yeah, he's fucking dead. Hit with this news, Akiyama heads back to his office where he's met by a young woman named Lily. She just needs money. Akiyama has a bit of a system where he lends money but doesn't charge interest on it, and really the only thing you need to do to get a loan from him is to pass his test. Lily is looking for a small loan of 100 million yen in less than 10 days. Akiyama has her work at one of his clubs for a couple of nights. She just has to make 3 million in 3 days. It's not bad considering her request. He ends up meeting back up with Kido, and that's where we learn that Kanamura was killed back at his office, and the main suspect seems to be a woman, mostly due to the compromising position. After this, some Yakuza show up to rough up Akiyama and Kido. Sugiyuchi shows up afterwards and once again takes him in for questioning, but this time, Sugiyuchi explains that there's a lot of other shit going on with the Tojo. Daigo is having to deal with the fallout from that one random Ueno Saiwa guy getting shot in the head. He's dealing with Katsuragi. He's a guy from the Ueno Saiwa clan. He's one of the few surviving members, apparently. Daigo has this guy, Shibata, who is Kanamura's boss, who is Arai's boss, come in and lose a pinky to try and make up for this random jack-off getting shot. Katsuragi says that's not enough, because he was a high-ranking member in the family. So, because the Tojo and the Ueno Saiwa are equals, he needs someone of similar rank. He says, you can do one of two things. You can either give me Kamurocho Hills or Majima, because apparently this random jack-off and Majima are of equal value. By happenstance, Akiyama ends up running a collection run around a place that Lily says that she worked. Strangely, it's a cross-dressing bar, so she didn't work there. And when he goes to ask the boss if he's met this woman before, the boss is dead. And he worked for Shibata, and also was found in a compromising position, and has been dead for a couple days. I'm starting to wonder if these deaths are related somehow. We find out that Akiyama's office was raided by some guys who work for Shibata. They're looking for Lily. After that confrontation, Lily passes the test, and Akiyama gets a chance to ask her, hey, why are all these guys obviously killed by you? She doesn't explain anything and tells him, don't worry, I'll pay back the money, and then fucking leaves. Anyway, Akiyama gets a call from the manager of the club she worked at, and more Yakuza have shown up looking for her. Except these guys work for Majima. So Majima makes his appearance. He explains that he was looking for Lily because he owes her a lot because of how bad he fucked up back in 85. And now we're getting all the way back to that. Remember in Yakuza 0 when I explained that Majima was one of 2 upstart Yakuza who tried to pull a hit on a rival family, and that one of the guys killed 18 of them before turning himself into the police? Meet Saejima, Taiga Saejima. Yes, it's a pun. No, I didn't realize that until I wrote this script. He has been on death row for the last 25 years. He's been transferred to a newer prison in Okinawa. Oh gee, I wonder where this is going. Hamazaki is still around, obviously in prison, also in Okinawa. He explains that he can help prove that Saijima's innocent, and that all they need to do is escape. So they do that. Hamazaki gets shot a bunch, and Saijima wakes up on Kiryu's beach. Before they escaped, Hamazaki said, hey, if you get to Okinawa, look for Kiryu. Haruka happens upon Saijima. There is a horribly uncomfortable cutscene that I am refusing to show you people, but I am only mentioning it because it made me and my friend horribly uncomfortable. Kiryu explains that he knows that Saijima escaped prison. He figures he should turn himself in, for the good of everything. They fight. Kiryu lets Saijima go back to Kamurocho, and he does just that. Because while he was, figuring things out in prison, he realized that, yeah, Majima never did go to prison, did he? Where the hell was he when all that went down? He goes back to Kamurocho to try and figure things out, which is where we get to meet the florist again. Florist explains that, yeah, Majima came to him a while ago, explaining that, yeah, shit went bad with the job, and that it was all a big setup from Shibata. Shibata was the one who fucked Majima up back in the 80s. And one of the surviving members of that hit was Katsuragi, the dude who's asking for Majima's fucking head now. So yeah, he finds Majima, they have a beat up and have a little heart-to-heart because they're both in their late 40s at this point. And then Majima explains that obviously there was a conspiracy for everything to go down, and he's not entirely sure who it was. But I already told you because I wasn't paying attention to my own fucking script. Cut to the third protagonist. Meet, oh Christ, what's his name? Tanemura. This isn't the first time we've met this guy, but the first time that we're putting a name to him. Remember him? You should. Yeah, he's a beat cop who's real tight with the community, and his dad died in the line of duty. He is still a bit of a dirty cop, and that's why Sugiyuchi doesn't like him very much. He still, extorts businesses for cash and favors. One of these favors is trying to find a girl named Yasuko. It's Lily. Her real name's Yasuko Saijima. She's Taiga's sister. His dad was investigating the hit back in the 80s, got killed, and one of the people he was going to interview was Yasuko. That didn't go well, obviously. He eventually tracks down Yasuko, and then some Shibata guys kidnap her out from under his nose. He tracks them to a dock on the outskirts of Tokyo, and that's where he finds Shibata and Arai hiding out. Yeah, Arai's been missing since the start of this game, and he finally showed his fucking face again. Turns out, they've been working together. We're not going to get any answers right now, because Arai's going to shoot not Katsuragi. He's going to shoot Shibata, because he works for Katsuragi, apparently. He's been working with Katsuragi, apparently. Tanemura saves Yasuko, Arai gets away, Shibata's dead, I suppose. Yasuko explains that the reason that she's been killing Shibata guys and the reason she needed 100 million yen was because Katsuragi told her that he can prove Saijima's innocence, but only if she kills Shibata guys or gets him 100 million yen. Of course, given how everything has been going, she figures that it's probably high time she just gives up trying to prove Saijima's innocence. So she gives Tanemura the 100 million yen because he's also looking for Katsuragi, and she tells him, hey, if you deliver this money, he'll help you out. I don't care whether or not he proves Saijima's innocent. I'm gonna go to Okinawa and see him before he dies, because that's about all I can do. So she leaves. Tanemura now has to try and get a hold of Katsuragi. How the hell is he going to do that? He gets a call from an anonymous number saying, hey, I know you want to talk to Katsuragi. Go talk to this guy, and he'll get you in touch with Katsuragi. So he goes and collects some flowers. Finally fucking paid off. It's only been 4 fucking games. So he gets in touch with Katsuragi and agrees to deliver the cash. Katsuragi explains that Saijima is actually innocent because he only wounded 18 guys, and then he showed up to finish the job. But before we can get any more details on that, Sugiyuchi shows up, and Tanemura makes away with the money and realizes, you know what, I should probably take this back to the guy who actually gave it. So now he and Akiyama catch up on their individual plots. They realize they were both working with the same girl and start to get more of an idea as to what's going on. We know for sure that the Tojo had a guy, the Ueno Saiwa had a guy, so now can we guess which cop was involved in this conspiracy? Well, after confronting his only lead, Sugiyuchi shows up. Yeah, sure enough, he was the third conspirator. Turns out, he was never actually a cop. He was an undercover Yakuza, pretending to be a cop so that the Ueno Saiwa thing would go off without a hitch. Back in the 80s, rubber bullets and less than lethal rounds weren't all that common. It would be weird if a civilian knew what a rubber bullet was, and it would also be just as weird if a Yakuza knew what a rubber bullet was. Turns out that the guns Majima and Saejima had gotten for the job were full of rubber bullets that just incapacitated the guys, and then Katsuragi walks in and puts one between the eyes on all of the 18 guys that he didn't want to survive. Now you might also be wondering that in a police report, what would the commissioner think if 18 victims who were confronted by one man all had perfect headshot wounds? And further, how the fuck did they have rubber bullet bruises all over them? So yeah, the commissioner knows what's going on, but he doesn't give a shit. He wants to be part of the conspiracy. So all of the high-ranking cops are also part of this fucking conspiracy. I fucking hate these plots. Munakata, the only reason I'm remembering his name is because he didn't come up a lot later. So Munakata is now also part of this conspiracy. He's been working with the underworld ever since. Sugiyuchi ends up getting shot by one of the other high-ranking cops, and now we finally get to Kiryu's chapter. In a very quick case of deja vu, Hamazaki washes up on Kiryu's beach. Obviously, Haruka has her reservations after, 3, but Kiryu was the one who offered him the second chance in the first place, so he gives him a second chance. But first he has to turn himself into the police because, Hamazaki also realized that while he was in prison, that this new prison that opened up isn't a normal prison. It's a Yakuza pit. They just send all the Yakuza they don't want to keep in the prison system to this one privately run prison, because privately run prisons are just a blight on society. He explains that the 10 billion that Jingu was trying to launder through the dojo was going to be given to the Ueno Saiwa, and then they were going to funnel it into this prison so that they could get rid of their rivals. I think. It's never fully explained, and I could not care any less about that plot. They go to the police station, and they run into Yasuko, who's trying to find Saejima, but because it's a private prison, nobody fucking knows where it is. She catches them up on her plot so far, and they decide, okay, best solution, we go back to Kamurocho and start dealing with this shit. And then Hamazaki dies, off screen, technically speaking. He was a bitch, but he got redeemed in the end. He's better than Mine, so Kiryu and Yasuko make it back to Kamurocho just in time to find out that Majima is being arrested, because Daigo sold him out to the cops. Kiryu, wanting to figure out what the hell is going on, takes Yasuko to New Serena, because it closed down in 2. Date's a bartender now, running New Serena, because, frankly speaking, someone needs to run the bar. We're going to need it for another couple of games. We find out that the reason Daigo turned him into the police was because Munakata and Arai, who's actually working for Munakata, are trying to fold the Yakuza into the police ranks so that they can more or less just run the whole country, like how the Yakuza and the cops worked together after World War II. I think. Flawed reasoning all around, but I'm not here to justify the villain's motivations. Yasuko finds out that, Saejima is hanging out in purgatory. She gets help from Akiyama and Tanemura, and Kiryu chases after them because he doesn't want her out in the open, because it's obviously a fucking trap. She goes there anyway, and sure enough, it's a trap. Kido is working with Katsuragi. I don't remember the whole thing. It doesn't fucking matter. Anyway, the siblings Saejima have been kidnapped. Oh, and we also learned that Kido robbed Akiyama blind. All 100 billion yen that Akiyama had put together. So, in order to get the money back and also save Yasuko and Taiga, Tanemura puts Kiryu on the phone with Katsuragi because he's still got his phone. Kiryu decides, hey, I've got some incriminating evidence regarding, the prison that you guys are running, and if you give me both siblings and Akiyama's cash, I'll just give you all of the evidence I have. So Kiryu walks straight into the second trap in less than 5 minutes, and Arai shoots Katsuragi. Apparently, Arai isn't actually working with Katsuragi, and he and Kido walk over to the cat, and then he shoots Kido because he's not working with Kido. Don't worry, Kido survives. Katsuragi doesn't. Fuck him. Katsuragi's fucking dead. Yasuka kills him. But he shot her too. But she's not allowed to die until he does. So she kills him and then she dies. Yeah, it sucks, but it is what it is. We then find out that Arai is a reverse Sugiyuchi, because he was never actually a Yakuza. He was an undercover cop working with the Yakuza to try and get the Yakuza to work with the cops like Munakata wanted, but he's also trying to prevent the corrupt cops from actually taking power. So he's actually working to... Why the hell is he doing any of this? I don't know. I don't remember it. It doesn't fucking matter. The protagonists have the money, and Arai has the evidence that he needs, and he shoots Munakata because Munakata was threatening the kids, and nobody threatens Kiryu's kids. They decide, you know what? We know that there's a bunch of conspirators out there that just aren't showing up. How about we just lay a trap and watch them show up? So they do that. After paying their respects to Yasuko, the 4 protagonists get a decent chunk of change out of Akiyama's vault, haul it up to the Millennium Tower, put out their phone calls, and they wait. Sure enough, Daigo, Arai, Kido, and all the cops show up just in time to clear up a few things. So the reason Daigo's involved is because Kido and him were working to try and actively undermine the Tojo itself, because, as it turns out, running an organization that big when you're as young as Daigo is really fucking hard. Arai was an undercover cop, I already mentioned that part. He was trying to take over the Tojo from Munakata. That is his motivation. But obviously, now that Munakata's dead, Arai just wants to do some good with this power that he's been given. Except Munakata's not dead. Haha, rubber bullets, lol. The 4 protagonists show up to ruin the day of all 4 bosses. Kiryu beats the shit out of Daigo for being a shitty boss. Saejima beats the shit out of Kido for being a shitty Yakuza. Akiyama beats the shit out of Arai. And then Tanemura has his boss fight. Fuck his boss fight. And it ends with Munakata on the front page of the news. And happy endings all around. Hooray! Date and Tanemura go back to the cops. Kiryu and Akiyama get back to their lives that they were living before. And Saejima joins Majima and Daigo back with the Tojo so that he can become a Yakuza again. That's that. It ends. It ends alright. It's good. So considering that this is only a year after Yakuza 3, it's no joke impressive how efficient this team is at improving their own games. Because gameplay-wise, 4 is significantly better than 3, and also the fact that they had to develop 4 new fighting styles really goes to show that they actually put a lot of effort in, except I don't really like Tanemura's fighting style, like at all. And his boss fight was just awful for his fighting style. I don't understand why it was that bad. Progression in this game is significantly more simple than it was in 3, much easier to understand, much more customizable, easy enough to level up that by the end of each chapter you basically end up fully leveling up each character. Chase sequences are still just as bad as they were in 3, and I got even more stupid footage from that. And because I was trying to speed through these games, I never really touched the minigames. Yeah, all around, quality-wise, 4 is actually really good. Akiyama is just a good new protagonist to have, charismatic without having to be a Yakuza. That's nice. Saejima's a bit stoic, also really chill and sort of meditative. I like him. I am going to immediately forget about Tanemura the moment I'm done editing this footage. Overall, I just like how the story progressed. It was good seeing Daigo without Kiryu's help. It was good seeing Kiryu just helping people out again. It was a bit light, all things considered, but it was still a good game. But if you are a content per dollar kind of person, then let me introduce you to...
Damn, boy, he's thick!
So, Yakuza 5 is notoriously the big slog of these games. It is easily just the roughest to get through, and I really wish I had the restraint to make these summaries even shorter than they already are. I'm going to be skipping over a lot just because there's so much to skip. Right, to catch up everybody, it's 2012. The Tojo are now trying to work with the Omi Alliance, and Daigo is making alliances with pretty much every family in the country just because, you know, being a Yakuza in 2012 kind of fucking sucks. Haruka is now an idol, and she's slowly working her way up in the early parts of the industry. Part of her agreement, though, was that Kiryu would have to basically go into hiding while she was an idol, otherwise her manager would refuse to promote her. So Kiryu is under a fake name, working as a taxi driver in a different city. Daigo has a meeting in the same city that Kiryu's hiding out in, and after meeting with him in secret, Daigo goes fucking missing. Already, tensions are high. Fantastic, what a record this is. After his disappearance, a bunch of people start making moves. His assistant is definitely trying to take over the Tojo, and his bodyguards are just causing problems for fucking everybody. While Kiryu tries to actively avoid the Yakuza plot, a shadowy guy claiming to be be a cop, comes up to Kiryu and says, hey, pretty sure that this Omi guy named Watase actually kidnapped Daigo so that the Omi would have power over him. And he's also pretty sure that the reason the Omi are making moves is because the Omi chairman is pretty much on his deathbed. Kiryu confronts Watase, and Watase says, hey, I don't know anything about that, but you should definitely go back to the Tojo because they're kind of floundering without your help, because apparently Kiryu is the linchpin that keeps the Tojo together. Daigo's bodyguards continue to cause problems for everybody. Their names are Morinaga and Aizawa. I'm only saying that because they come back later. Some Yakuza shenanigans ensue, and there's a big punch-up at the docks, and everybody basically gets it out of their system before Morinaga shows up and fucking stone cold kills Daigo's assistant. He also tells Kiryu that Aizawa's fucking dead. He also stone cold killed Aizawa. Shut up. That plot is over as far as Kiryu's concerned. Unfortunately for him, Majima's fucking dead. You know he's not. Nobody believes he's dead. Of course he's not fucking dead. Kiryu, obviously believing that Majima is dead, decides to go back to Kamurocho because he wants to figure out what the fuck is going on. Saejima, he went back to prison for personal reasons. While he was inside, a bunch of shit went on the outside. Obviously, Majima's fucking dead, which he hears about, and along with that, he also got expelled from the Tojo for reasons unknown. Obviously, with all this shit going down, the prison warden is like, hey, some weird shit's going down, and I don't trust it. Apparently, Majima got killed in a neighboring town. You should go there. So the prison warden lets him escape with this guy named Baba. He learns that Majima was talking with a local family, goes to the family. He learns that they wanted to partner up with Majima, but for one reason or another, he told them, hey, shit's off, yo, don't fucking do this. So they don't. And then Majima went and got killed. And then Baba kills the boss for some reason. Just shoots him. So Saejima goes and confronts him on that, and he's like, the guy who's actually pulling all the strings just wanted me to make sure that you survived prison and that you got out when we needed you. Which, you got out when we needed you to. So my job's done. Bye now. And then a shadowy guy claiming to be a cop shows up and arrests Saejima. He starts taking him away and explains that, hey, there's a traitor in the Tojo clan. And Saejima's like, wait, you mean there's a traitor in the Tojo clan? So there's a big Yakuza plot going on, and in order to investigate this conspiracy, he wants Saejima going back to Kamurocho to try and find Morinaga and Baba. Haruka is in Sotenbori, doing idol things like playing DDR and competing on celebrity quiz shows. Her boss is Park. She is actually doing alright as an idol, like surprisingly good for a very young idol. Apparently Park is promoting a really big show that Haruka is going to put on at the Japan Dome back in Kamurocho, and after she did that interview, she got a letter from her ex. She confides in Haruka and gives her a special pen that her ex gave her, and then she fucking dies by suicide. So now obviously Haruka's broken up about that and is really questioning what's going on. But with Park's death, it means we get to meet another one of her associates. Akiyama is in Sotenbori, doing Akiyama things, like sleeping in his office and pissing off the local Yakuza. He finds out that Park died, so he goes to her office to try and figure out what the hell's going on, and obviously two protagonists being within 10 feet of each other is very strange, so he talks with Haruka and they decide, you know what, we should investigate this shit. So they investigate this shit and they realize that her suicide note was forged by this giant Yakuza looking dude. Why did he want her dead? Who knows? But they go to his boss, who's just a rival of Park's, and he more or less handles the idols that Haruka's been competing with and all of this, and gives off major Yakuza vibes, so Akiyama doesn't buy shit from him. Basically tells Akiyama, hey, I had nothing to do with Park's death, go about your day. And then Akiyama gets confronted by a shadowy guy claiming to be a cop, who explains that, yeah, you should probably stay out of this. Obviously Akiyama doesn't do that, and goes back to help Haruka now that Park's gone. Turns out they are looking for that letter from Park's ex, because apparently he's very important to the Yakuza and recently went missing, and the letter showed up after he went missing, so clearly he's somewhere. So Akiyama confronts the Yakuza, and they explain this and say that they just want the letter, and Akiyama says he doesn't fucking know where it is, but somebody knows where it is. Haruka has been kidnapped. Of course, the rival of Park's doesn't really abide by, kidnapping, so he beats up the big Yakuza guy for kidnapping Haruka and takes her back to the office. Also, fuck you, Dustin, for making me laugh as hard as I did when this cutscene played.
失礼します。
You lose this?
What? Fuck you. Fuck you for that.
Haruka? Haruka?
Fuck off.
眠っているだけです。怪我はありません。
どういうつもりだ？
この度は御社の大事なお嬢さんを大変申し訳ございませんでした。私はね、秋山さん。
I can't read the...
大阪
I
芸
can't
能
read
の
the
社長であると同時に
subtitles because my
もう
eyes
一
are
つ裏
tearing
の
up.
顔を持っています。近江連合本部長大阪工業会長という顔を。
So Katsuya explains apparently him, Park, and Majima were really close friends back in the day. The only reason that Katsuya wants the letter is so that he can find Majima because he really misses him, especially now that Park's dead. So he makes a deal with Haruka, his guys fuck up that deal horribly, and Haruka and Akiyama go about their business trying to put on that show at the Japan Dome. Tatsuo Shinada is a disgraced baseball player who is broke as shit. He's in debt to a loan shark, his job doesn't pay well, but he's taken care of by some of the locals. When a shadowy guy, it's not the same shadowy guy, obviously, it's just Daigo in a mask, confronts him and says, hey, some shady shit is going on in this town, and it's to do with why you're a disgraced baseball player. So the game that got him banned from baseball was a rigged game, and it was rigged by a family who were trying to get the Omi and the Tojo out of town because the Omi and Tojo kept betting on baseball games in their town. They rigged the game against them, which got the cops involved and got Shinada booted because they figured he was in on it. He investigates further, learns that, hey, all the people that have been taking care of him are actually civilian Yakuza, because the Yakuza family doesn't actually exist. It's just his old manager and a bunch of civilians that have been just basically being Yakuza without the tattoos and the honor and bullshit. We also learn that his boss was killed by a shadowy guy who tried to make it look like suicide and or that the Omi were there. Daigo's satisfied with that plot summary, and they both go to Kamurocho. So now everybody is going back to Kamurocho. Kiryu ends up running into Baba. Saejima ends up running into Aizawa, who is still alive and is trying to find Morinaga. So both Saejima and Aizawa are looking for Morinaga. Katsuya is trying to get Haruka's concert cancelled, but Akiyama won't budge. Shinada is trying to get money from Akiyama so that he can pay to have the concert cancelled, because at the end of his chapter he learned that some bad shit was gonna happen. Katsuya announces to the world that actually it's not just Haruka's concert, it's actually her and her rival's concert. That's a television appearance. Now Kiryu and Saejima both have a lead because they're both looking for Katsuya. And so they show up. Watase is also there because he's also trying to figure out what the hell's going on. And Katsuya explains that, hey, whoever's pulling the strings clearly wants us to fight each other. So let's just fight each other. And they do, and sure enough, a shadowy guy shoots all four of them. The guy who's been showing up in literally everybody else's chapters is actually Kurosawa. Kurosawa is the Omi chairman who is dying of terminal cancer, and he's just been pulling all the strings in all of these plots to try and get everybody together. Daigo arrives just in time to get shot by this asshole. Daigo and Katsuya are both recovering in the hospital, and the rest of the protagonists decide, you know what, shit's clearly going to go down, let's try and save everybody. Kiryu and Saejima catch up on their plots, Akiyama shows up, catches up on his plot, Shinada's also there, and they come up with a plan. Oh yeah, Kurosawa hired Baba to kill Haruka. Anyway, Shinada's gonna go stop Baba, Saejima is going to go save Majima from Kurosawa, and Akiyama and Kiryu are going to work the crowd because kidnapping Majima clearly has some ramifications in the Tojo clan. All this shit goes down, and Kurosawa explains that the only reason that he was doing any of this was so that he could leave behind a legacy to his son. Daigo sends Kiryu to the Tojo HQ, where he finds that most of the officers are fucking dead, and Aizawa is there because he's Kurosawa's kid, and the whole point was so that Kurosawa could leave both the Tojo and the Omi Alliance to Aizawa, who could be top of the top of the Yakuza. And then Kiryu does his thing and starts bleeding. And while all of this is going down, Haruka finishes her concert and immediately retires, announcing to the world that she definitely, clearly, and obviously cares more about her family and trusts that Kazuma Kiryu is a good person, and retires at her debut concert in front of the world and everybody and runs away. Meanwhile, Kiryu, still bleeding out, tries desperately to get back to Kamurocho and faints in the snow. The last thing we see is him slowly lose consciousness in Haruka's arms as it cuts to black. And that's how this shit ends. That's Yakuza 5, y'all. That's it. It cuts there. There is no post-credit scene. There's nothing. No, Kiryu, don't. We still have 4 more games to go. Now, I'm completely talking out of my ass. I have zero evidence for this, but I get the feeling this was supposed to be the last one. Like, the way it ends with everything and sort of wrapping up the plots the way it did, I get the feeling this was supposed to be the sign-off for the series. We don't get a follow-up to this for another 4 years. The way this shit ended, clearly there was some feedback, because they released 0, Kiwami 1, and 6 in less than a year of each other. Okay, this game is just too fucking bulky. There's a lot in this game that I skipped over entirely. Not just story stuff, which I did still skip over, but there's a lot of stuff. It's not like it's just one game. It is 5 games combined. Yeah, that subheader was not a joke. This is a lot. In terms of gameplay, the gameplay is just as good, if not a lot better than 4's. The fighting styles are a bit more well-rounded, and I appreciate some of the story stuff they did. Seeing Haruka on her own was kind of interesting. Gameplay-wise, the progression is basically a hybrid of 3 and 4, where it's just a handful of lists, but it's easier to comprehend, and not as stupid as 3's progression system. As for the story stuff, Shinada literally could have been written out of the entire story, and it would have not made a damn difference. Which is a shame, because I actually kind of like Shinada as a character. But at least Tanemura had something to do with the main plot of the last game. I mean, overall, this is certainly a game. It's many games. Between Kiryu's Crazy Taxi and Saejima in the Woods and Haruka's DDR minigame, there's a lot going on here. And there's still all of the minigames, all of the side stuff, all of the, arcade things. Everything is still here. And there's sub-stories, which I completely skipped over because I'm not doing all of that. We'll say that if you desperately need the most game for as little money as possible, this is definitely an option. I'd say at least give this one a shot. I mean, worst case scenario, you're getting your fucking money's worth.
You are the father!
So now we've hit a bit of a crossroads in the series as a whole. 6 was the first game that they released on the new Dragon engine. It was a direct sequel to 5, taking place literal seconds after the end of 5. And I feel it necessary that I preface this part of the video. I really like this game. I think you should play it. I have a lot of issues with the plot of this game, and I will get to those. So Kiryu is in the hospital recovering from a bad case of Yakuza 5. Akiyama is comforting Haruka and explaining that she kind of retired in not the best way possible, especially since she just announced that she was related to a Yakuza. After everything that happened, Kiryu ends up getting arrested and decides, you know what, I'm just gonna write it out. I'm just gonna go to prison for a few years, and when I get released, everything will have died down, everything will have calmed, and I can just live a peaceful life with my kids and not have to deal with any of this bullshit. Unfortunately, social media exists. After doom scrolling through all of the headlines regarding regarding her retirement, Haruka realizes that her being with the kids is going to kinda accidentally ruin all of their lives, so she decides to just up and leave. She tells him, hey, I'm gonna go live near Kiryu's prison, and when he gets released, I'll come back with him. In the meantime, I'm just gonna go live a new life. Alright, I have to hop and skip across this plot. I think you should play this one. I'm not going to focus too much on individual things. You should just play this game. Kiryu gets released, Haruka is still missing, and nobody knows where she is. He goes to Akiyama. Akiyama isn't there because Sky Finance got run out of town because shit went down while Kiryu was in prison. Turns out that Kamurocho has a triad problem again. It's not the Snake Flower because they're gone, it's the Sayo Triad. They are causing problems for the Tojo because their boss's son Jimmy died. And also Little Asia got torched to the ground and they rebuilt it. After trying to figure out more about what was going on with everything, Date gets in touch with Kiryu and tells Kiryu that, hey, I know where Haruka is, but you're not going to like it. She got hit by a car and is in the hospital, unconscious, and has a baby named Haruto. So after trying to investigate more about Haruka's accident, this random detective basically plot dumps the whole triad story that I just gave to you to Kiryu. Don't know why Kiryu needs to know that, but it ends up being relevant. So after Jimmy died, Daigo went back to prison, the Sayo are taking over most of Kamurocho, and the fucking Jingwan Mafia is back. Isn't that fucking fantastic? Kiryu learns that some guy named Someya is keeping tabs on him from the Tojo, and his boss, Sugai, is really just trying not to get Kiryu involved, and also definitely was responsible for burning down Little Asia. The Tojo don't know anything about Haruka's accident. Obviously, Kiryu doesn't buy that for a fucking second, but he gets a call from Date because a dude from Child Protective Services has come to collect Haruto. Kiryu wants to take care of Haruto. CPA says, fuck you, you have no legal connection to the child, you're not fucking taking the baby. So he kidnaps him instead. And then Date sorts shit out with the CPA so that Kiryu doesn't go to prison again. Now, obviously, everybody is very curious as to how and why Haruka dropped off the face of the earth for 3 years and then showed back up on the far side of a hit and run with a baby. Do they have any leads? Well, Date does. And no, it's not the florist this time. You'll be surprised. No, she had her phone on her, and there was a picture that was taken in Onomichi, Hiroshima. So we're going to Hiroshima. Kiryu goes to a bar, meets Kiyomi, the bar's owner, and Nagumo, the bar's regular. Immediately causes tension with Nagumo because he's a local Yakuza. Kiyomi decides to help Kiryu with his investigation, and she sets him up with a place to stay. Her friend Ino plot dumps the Yakuza plot to Kiryu about Onomichi. Nagumo is captain for a small family called the Hirose, who are subsidiaries to the Masazoi family, who are subsidiaries to the Yomei alliance. The Yomei are entirely unrelated to the Tojo or Omi, and don't need any outside influence in order to maintain their control. Nagumo has a crush on Kiyomi, and that gets him in trouble with his bosses because she owes them money. He didn't do collections and gets into trouble with Masazoi, who beats the fuck out of him. Kiryu saves Nagumo and is now fucking best friends with this guy. Nagumo takes him to the Hirose family, where we meet Yuta, the youngest out of all of them, and Hirose, the old coot and patriarch. He takes Haruto to them, shows them Haruka's picture, and we get to see just how bad these guys are at lying, as they entirely dodge any sort of answers regarding whether or not they know her. And then Masazoi shows up again, goes 0-2 against Kiryu, and then Koshimitsu, the captain of the Yomei alliance, shows up to explain to everybody that, hey, Kiryu's actually a protagonist, y'all. And so now that they know that Kiryu's a protagonist, they plot dump Haruka's plot onto Kiryu. After she left Okinawa, she came here. Everybody immediately recognized her, but they didn't talk about it because clearly she was stressed. She was more or less just good friends with everybody in the Yakuza because she's just chill like that. Then she up and left a couple months ago. Just gone, left by no rhyme or reason, no warning, just gone. So they're just as surprised to learn that she also had a baby, and clearly nobody knows who the father is. But she did work at a bar nearby. So they go talk with Kiyomi, and she says, yeah, I have my suspicions who the father is and who you might want to go talk to. Too bad that's going to get interrupted by Someya, who is actually her ex-husband and has custody over their kid. I'm only touching on that because their relationship comes up later. So she gets kidnapped kidnapped by Somaya and his guys. The boys go and rescue her, and then we get a taste of the Onomichi plot. I fucking hate the Onomichi plot, so we're gonna save that for part 2 of this section. Going to find Haruto's dad, and then I will talk about the Onomichi plot. They talk with Kiyomi, and she explains, yeah, this kid named Tatsukawa, Yuta's old school buddy, was yelling at Haruka over the phone, or at least she thinks it was Haruka, saying, hey, you should get rid of the baby. Okay, where is Tatsukawa? Well, he's a host back in Kamurocho. Nagumo, Yuta, and Kiryu head back to Tokyo to try and figure out where the hell Tatsukawa is. Now, if you want to find a host in Kamurocho, first place you go, Stardust. Problem. It's not run by Katsuki anymore, and Yuya's also not there anymore. They meet up with Yuya, and he explains, yeah, the place got bought out by some Korean group a little while ago. Specifically, Jingwon, obviously, and specifically their boss, Jungi Han. This dude. Kiryu goes through the motions, and he explains, yeah, Tatsukawa doesn't work for him anymore, but he does know where his place is. He's dead. Yeah, he got killed by the Sayo Triad for some reason. Apparently, according to the cops, he was an informant for the Triad. Now, obviously, Yuta, being his childhood friend, is a little confused why a Japanese kid would be working with the Chinese. Also, according to Date, the Tojo are now trying to find Haruka. Good news all around. Akiyama and this random Tojo guy that Kiryu ran into before explained to Kiryu that the Sayo Triad are making a bunch of weird moves, especially since Jimmy died. So, if we want to know why they killed Tatsukawa, we should go ask them. They infiltrate Little Asia, and they meet this guy named Ed, and he explains that Tatsukawa was actually working for them because he wasn't Japanese. He was a Heihaitsi. I don't know how to pronounce it. Basically, for legal reasons, his Chinese parents on the mainland had to ship him out, and he became a naturalized Japanese citizen, but worked for the Triad basically to repay them for helping introduce him to Japan. And he also betrayed them. After that explanation, Masuzoi shows up and explains that he was also a Heihaitsi, and Big Lo shows up. He's the boss if the name didn't give it away. Jimmy's dad. And says, hey, if you want to learn what Tatsukawa had against us, come meet me at Shangri-La, and we'll talk about it there. So Kiryu decides, yeah, I'll go to Shangri-La, I'll talk with him. Unfortunately, Somaya tags along because the Tojo are still at war with the Triad and heard about this meeting, so decides, you know what, I'm gonna end this war one way or another. They confront Big Lo, Somaya tries to kill him, Kiryu stops him, and lets Somaya go. Big Lo explains that Tatsukawa isn't Haruto's dad, but Haruto is very important because of who his dad actually is. The Yakuza are going after Haruto too. Hirose takes Haruto and sneaks away with him back to Hiroshima, find Hirose, and he explains everything that he knows. Turns out that the reason Masuzoi and Tatsukawa were so ingrained with the Yomei is because Yuta is Lo's second son, a Heihaitsi, and is also Haruto's dad. We know who Haruto's dad is. That's that plot taken care of. But to summarize pretty much the entire rest of that plot, Yuta's guardians were trying to scare Haruka to try and get rid of the baby. She told Hirose. Hirose took her into hiding. Tatsukawa was sent after her, and he hit her with a car. The Yomei hired the Jingwon to deal with the Sayo. Jungi Han explains all this to Kiryu, then gets shot because he's involved in the Onomichi plot, which I really don't want to fucking talk about. Actually, no, I need to get to it because I already finished the Haruto's dad plot. We need to get to the Onomichi plot. Yeah, I'm going to entirely skip over pretty much the rest of the story to get to the Onomichi plot. If you give a shit about how Haruka and Yuta and everybody else is doing, especially Kiyomi and them, just play the fucking game. It's fun. It's short. It's good. During World War II, yeah, we're fucking cutting deep on this one, there was an admiral named Minoru Daidoji. In an effort to repel the American forces, he starts embezzling a shit ton of military funds to build a massive warship called the Yamato Mark II. By 1945, it was far from finished and was not going to get anywhere close to done by the time the Americans found out about it. So he puts it into hiding and commissions the Kiwami Shipbuilding Company in Hiroshima to hide it. And while it's hiding, he wants them to finish it so that he can unleash it upon the American Navy and take back Japan from the Americans. One warship isn't going to take down an entire naval force, and it took him another 30 years to come to terms with that, because in the 70s, he told them, you know what, it's too late, just destroy it. In the last 30 years, he's been using using his political connections as well as some other shadow dealings to keep the ship a secret, while also building up what would later be known as the Daidoji faction. In political circles, he was known as the Fixer, being able to get rid of any scandals that came up. Among the public, he was just a decorated war hero that retired happy. He's got a reputation to uphold. So when he goes to Iwami to have them destroy it, they just say no. You know what? In fact, better yet, how about we keep it a secret and you give us favors and contracts in exchange? But don't worry, we will keep it a secret. Heiso Iwami founds the Yomei Alliance with the sole purpose of keeping the secret of Onomichi a secret. Hirose was recruited by them and functionally became their hitman, because the best way to keep a secret is to kill anybody you don't trust. You wanna know the worst way to keep a secret? Is to involve your fucking children, which Iwami did. Tsuneo Iwami is Heiso's kid and is the entire reason for every single fuck up in this entire plot. Tsuneo desperately wants the power that his dad has, so he wants the Yomei to take over the Tojo and the Yomi Alliance and just weaken every other syndicate across the country. So he recruited the Tojo to burn down Little Asia so that he could hire the Sayo to move in and take down the Tojo, and then he hired the Jingwon Mafia to try and deal with the Sayo, and then because of all of those subplots, Kiryu ended up getting involved. Kiryu getting involved leads him on an Indiana Jones-esque hunt for clues that leads him to the Yamato Mark II, accidentally revealing it as it's on the news, and Minoru Daidoji is super fucking pissed about that. Also, dude's ancient at this point. He has to be at least 100, 110. He's literally on his deathbed. He tells Tsuneo that if he wants money in the favors, he has to kill Kiryu, as if he's going to. Kiryu does his thing, and Tsuneo orders that Haruka get killed. So Kiryu jumps in front of the bullet, takes it for Haruka, and the rest of the boys save Haruka before Kiryu dies in Yuta's arms. No, Kiryu, don't. We still have 3 more games to go. In the post-credits scene, we learn that Daidoji just full-on died after Tsuneo failed to kill Kiryu, and everyone believes that Kiryu died at the shipyard, but the Daidoji ended up saving him because the new guy running it is kind of sympathetic to Kiryu and everything. So he says, how about this? We'll pay you a shit ton of money to just forget this ever happened and you can go live a peaceful life. And Kiryu says, nah, I think I'm better off dead. How about, instead, you just put me into hiding, fake my death, and nobody will ever bother Haruka ever again. Which is fair enough. Daidoji end up taking Kiryu into hiding. The only person who's aware of any of this is Date, who has to deliver the news to everybody else, and I'm sure nobody believes that Kiryu's actually dead. Like, seriously, nobody can believe that Kiryu fucking dies. Daigo leaves prison and goes back to run the Tojo with Majima and Saejima. Haruka and Yuta go back to Okinawa to raise Haruto with the help of the other kids, and Kiryu proceeds to live his new life under the Daidoji faction. I will say that I'm actually kind of happy with where everything ended up. I'm glad that we got here, but goddamn, I really do not like the Onomichi plot. I understand that it's probably the best they could come up with to put Kiryu in protective custody with a secret agency, but Jesus fucking Christ. But of course, it somehow makes more sense to have a secret organization show up out of nowhere to just wrap up the plot. But hey, this game at least allowed the next couple of games to exist, so I'm okay with it. 6 has to have some of the best gameplay out of any of these games, I will say. I really like the Dragon Engine. It makes the gameplay so much smoother than the last several games. And considering that they use it for every other beat-em-up in the franchise and the spin-offs, the mini-games that they have in this one are pretty fun. Even the arcade got some improvements. They added Puyo Puyo. I spent way too much time playing Puyo Puyo. This game has the same upgrade system that I mentioned in Kiwami 2, the one that was interesting but not really good. And despite all of my misgivings with the story and the fact that I really hate the secondary plot, overall, it's still a good game. Though, if you don't really care about the story and care more about the gameplay, then I've got just the game for you.
Sorry. 30 seconds.
camera died again. I got hungry. I went to go get food. God damn it. So Like a Dragon Gaiden, the man who erased his name. If you did end up playing Like a Dragon, which technically came out before this one, then the plot can be summarized as, meanwhile, I am going to wrap it up real quick though, because this one is short. Kiryu is a secret agent for the Daidoji faction now, and he is really tight with his handler. Except, problem, literally nobody believes he's actually dead. So, remember Watase from Yakuza 5? Well, he's back, and he's actually looking for Kiryu. Turns out that in the year 2019, being a Yakuza really fucking sucks. And it only took us 9 fucking games to come to that conclusion. So, Daigo and Watase, respectively being the chairmans of both the Dojo and the Yomi, decide, fuck it. And they're just going to dissolve the Yakuza, both organizations, just gone, wiped off the face of the earth. But they need to make sure that they have at least some support, and Watase thinks that it's probably best that he has some protection, so Kiryu shows up to help him out. Obviously, the Daijoji have their reservations on this whole thing, but Kiryu sympathizes with Watase and Daigo, so he goes in, helps him out a little bit, and now there's no more Yakuza, which is why all of the games going forward are now Like a Dragon instead of Yakuza. And if you want literally any more details on that, then go to Like a Dragon, because Yakuza Like a Dragon takes place at the exact same time. Gaiden literally translates to side story, so... However, this game is worth it just for the last cutscene in the game. 100%. The game is fantastic, gameplay's awesome, and if it was just the gameplay and that cutscene, it'd be worth it. I like to summarize it as a John Wick story for Kiryu, the retired legend after so many years and finally getting an out type situation. If you have played every other game, then it's more Kiryu, it's more beat 'em up gameplay, and it's the best gameplay in the franchise. But if you don't know who Kiryu is and you were introduced to the games through Yakuza Like a Dragon, then this serves well enough to introduce you to his character. Even better than 6 and the other Dragon Engine games, they introduce a bunch of new side gimmicks for Kiryu's fighting styles, which is really fun. I enjoyed it. The mini games are pretty much a highlight reel for Yakuza. They brought back pocket racing. All of the side characters they introduce are really awesome, and I look forward to seeing more of them in Infinite Wealth. I mentioned the upgrade system in pretty much all of these reviews. This one's okay. You only need to grind a little bit of the side stuff. Overall, this game is just good. But regardless of how good Gaiden turned out to be, it will still always pale in comparison to hot take, Like a Dragon is the best game in the entire franchise so far. The writing is some of the best in the entire series. Ichiban is my favorite protagonist. It's more accessible than the other games. You don't have to be good at action games to enjoy this one. It is a lot more intricate with all the RPG stuff that they introduce, but it's a good trade-off, especially for people who aren't reactive enough. That is to say, I was much better at this game than I was at all of the beat-em-ups. All of the mini-games are amazing. All of the side characters are well written. I should probably talk about the story, but there's one little problem with that. I don't want to summarize the plot for this game. I respect it too much. This is my one exception. You have to play this one. I'm not giving it to you for free, alright? It has literally the best writing so far, the best characters. Its gameplay is smooth. Its minigames are fun. There is no reason not to play this game. If you don't like reading all the subtitles, it even has the English dub. If you aren't good at beat-em-ups, it's turn-based. And if you don't like turn-based combat, then the style should make up for it. And if it doesn't, then I can't fucking help you. You're gonna have to find someone else to summarize the story for you. The characters and the story overall are too good to waste on this kind of YouTube video, so I'm just not gonna do it. Play it for yourself. I will probably end up doing a video on this one properly. After I finish 8, I'll probably summarize both of the games similar to how I've done here, whenever I end up playing 8. But hey, I also don't want to get called out for false advertising with my videos, so I'll give you a summary of the game. After being killed by his king, our hero is resurrected by a necromancer before being saved by a dishonored knight. After recruiting the help of a barmaid, a spider, and a serpent, The party defeats their first dragon before enlisting the help of a shapeshifter, climbing the highest tower in the land, and defeating the demon lord. I am only exaggerating a little bit. Of course, I will give you these takes of mine from the game. Ichiban is literally the best, and Kume is literally the fucking worst. I would put Kume even lower than I put Mine, and I fucking hated Mine. I only hope that Kume makes an appearance in Infinite Wealth so that he gets his fucking comeuppance for what he fucking did. Play the game, and you will understand. I fucking hate Kume. So I guess that's it, huh? That's all of the games in the main series. There are a bunch of spin-offs. I'm not ever fucking playing Dead Souls unless they remaster Dead Souls, which they won't. I'm never playing that one. There's a whole side series that they started that I'm not sure if they're still going to be doing. It's been a little bit. I'll eventually get around to talking about those games. I'm really looking forward to playing Lost Judgment and Nation, so we'll see. I guess now that I've finished this video, I can take my time playing through Yakuza 8 and Lost Judgment and Ishin and all them. Like I said, I played through all of these games in the last year. That video I released was me starting the games. I breezed through these games as quickly as I could, took a few breaks here and there, but now I get to actually take my time, and I'm really looking forward to doing that. Regardless of how things are going forward, I did want to end the video on something specific about these games. I made a joke at the start of the video that it took 10 years for this game to reach the mainstream, and that's not really true in either direction. The games were really fucking popular when they came out. Even if they were a little rough, even at the time, the games were well reviewed and fucking lauded for their gameplay and their story, even if the first game was a little rough, if you ask me. But the games remained popular. There's a reason why they released so many games over the span of only 10 years. Even after Yakuza 0 launched and it started getting a lot of mainstream attention and a lot of news, even now there's a lot of people that still don't know about this game. There are people I know, there are people I'm going to be sending this video to who haven't even really heard of these games. I don't know how Infinite Wealth is going to turn out. It sounds like they're getting a little burned out on the series after nearly 20 years, and they're probably going to be taking a break. Frankly, they can do what they want. They have a whole studio dedicated to this franchise now. I'm just excited to see where they go with all of this, because I just love these fucking games, and I really want people to play them. Don't use my horrible summaries of these stories as an excuse not to play these games, because I played through them straight-faced. I chuckled a little bit. I said, "Are you fucking kidding me?" at least 3 times. And of course, with 20 years, they were able to iterate, improve, and write the characters better. Seeing that kind of improvement is really encouraging. I got into these games just because the style suckered me in, and I stayed around because I really liked the characters. The stories went all over the place, but the characters and the style and the music and the gameplay, especially the fucking music, is the reason that I stuck around. And that's actually kind of what I wanted to end on. This video was horribly rushed. Despite the fact that I've been technically working on it for a year, I only got most of it done in a month, so I'm probably not gonna like this video. It's gonna feel really awful. I had an outro planned that I was really excited for, and due to risks of copyright, I can't use the song I wanted to. If you don't play these games, you should at least give them a try, and this song is literally the best song. I'll leave you on this. While I can't use the song I wanted to, it'll be linked in the description. There is a second song that shows up in Like a Dragon's credit sequence that I can use because it's public domain. So I'm going to dance like a jackass while you get to listen to my horrible rendition of that song, and that's going to be the end of the video. I also don't know when I'm going to be posting more. I don't know how good those videos are going to be, but I have now plagued you with the knowledge of this franchise, and now you get to witness just the stupidest thing that I'm going to put in this entire video. Y'all have a good year, and just play these fucking games. Good night.
Da 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 da. da, 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 da.